So low self-esteem refers to the judgment we make about our own selves and subsequently has a profound effect on how we feel. Low self-esteem can make us feel inadequate. It can have an effect on the way we perceive others, and it can have an effect on the way we perceive ourselves. It has an effect on the way we allow ourselves to express our emotions, and affects our communication skills, and often makes it hard for us to say no to someone in fear of rejection. And I can definitely say that it's affected my how do I put it? It's definitely affected how I express my emotions, and it's definitely affected how I communicate, although I try very hard. Esteem can be influenced by a range of things, for example, such as past experiences, opinions, social conditioning, and one that I believe is a big one is personality traits. An example of low self-esteem being influenced by a personality trait may be something like perfectionism, which can cause us to feel, or to never feel good about ourselves, be harsh and critical, and have unrealistic expectations of yourself and also others in your life. And this can stem from, as I mentioned before, childhood or past experiences, so they are all kind of intertwined and a behaviour that is generally conditioned into you. So another one might be having too much empathy, and I think I can relate to that one a lot. In my case, overall, it would probably be too affectionate and too loving. And that kind of causes me to be vulnerable and be taken advantage of in some circumstances. However, in saying that, it is how we control and it's how we perceive these qualities ourselves, and if we perceive them as either negative or positive. So for example, I see my affection and lovingness as a strength rather than a weakness, but is something I need to constantly be aware of, because it can be used against me and undermine me and affect my self-esteem. So as a result of our self-esteem being influenced, we can develop a series of beliefs that can basically contribute to our unhappiness in different areas of our lives, and can change the way and play a role in how we perceive ourselves. For example, I was in a very emotionally and mentally abusive relationship for probably about 4 years. And there were a number of factors that I mentioned before involved, and it changed the way that I perceived myself and how I perceive myself in relationships, whether that be friendships or romantic relationships or family relationships. As I said before, we can develop that series of beliefs, and some examples of beliefs can include maybe something about your appearance. So I should be slim and attractive, or I should be tall and muscular. Or maybe it's beliefs about our performance. For example, I should have a high status and be well paid. I should have a high libido, or I should be good at sport. But what do all these things have in common? And it's the word should. So should is based on expectations of others and what we think society expects of us. But that may not be who you are or what you really want. So saying I should is you making the conscious decision to do something to fit into society or to do it for someone else. I mean, if you want to do it, then go for it, but for the purpose of this video, that's not what I'm talking about. So what happens when we don't meet these expectations that we've put on ourselves? we feel vulnerable and our emotions become amplified. So an example of that would be loneliness. If you think to yourself, everyone around me is married and they all have kids, so I should be married and I should have kids. But that may not be what you want for yourself. But because everyone around me has it, I expect it for myself. And when you don't have it, the feeling of failure and inadequacy will become overpowering and amplify. And that feeling of loneliness won't get you, it'll just get you further down. Like it's just going to be. So low self-esteem is a vicious cycle of negative and self-critical thinking that often goes unqualified, resulting in negative habits, which is something I talked about in my past video of unhealthy habits. Anyway, and it then reinforces a negative view on yourself. So it generally happens in a cycle, and the cycle goes like this. You'll start off with a situation, and that situation might be your boss asking you to do an important job. Then from there, it will lead to your low self-esteem, if you have it, and activating, leading to negative and self-critical thoughts. So you might think, what if I stuff up? Everyone will think I'm useless. I'm never going to be able to do this job. From there, it leads to self-defeating behavior, such as avoiding the job because you don't have the self-esteem or the confidence to carry out that job. In turn, that results in depressed behavior and further critical thinking. However, we can stop the cycle, and we can stop it as soon as we start to experience those negative thoughts that I was talking about. So when we initiate that negative thought process, we can stop and we can redirect our thoughts to a positive thought and challenge emotion and the negative correlation between you and that activity you're stopping yourself from doing. Something that we have focused on today in therapy is our inner self-critic, and it tends to go unchallenged, and negative messages we tell ourselves on a day-to-day basis or other people tell us become entrenched as part of the way that we see ourselves. These messages are majority of the time entrenched in us from our past, whether that be abusive relationships or negative thinking from other people close to you. And over time, these things become what we say to ourselves, and that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me because, that's how I feel. We need to remember though that all these behaviours were caused for a reason, and it's not because you're broken, it's not because I'm broken. In saying that though, it doesn't mean that I'm proud of my past unhealthy behaviours, and I'm not making an excuse for it. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to change my unhealthy behaviours. But we need to remember it's not because you're broken and you need to fix it. Myself in particular struggle with impulsive and destructive at times behaviour that make me feel hopeless and really, really low on my self-esteem, especially when I hurt others by the behaviour that I do. And I struggle with emotional regulation, but that doesn't mean I'm worthless, and I'm learning that now.